Welcome in, guys. This is the Fantasy Football Academy. We're going to be talking about our rankings today. I got Blake here and Johnny. How you guys doing?
Doing well, man.
Fantastic.
All
Happy
right.
to be here.
Awesome,
Ready to
awesome.
talk some football.
Yeah, I mean, season's right around the corner. We put a lot of hard work into these rankings. So if you guys can do us the biggest favor, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and without further ado, we're going to get into it. So, right off the rip, I think we should start with the QB position, the most important position in football, and not so important in fantasy football, but that's okay. So, we got Patrick Mahomes as the overall QB1. Blake, it looks like you got Hurts over Josh Allen. Got a quick take for us?
Yeah, I don't think it'll surprise a lot of people. I just think, when you're choosing between two guys with relatively similar ADPs, both guys you think are going to have monster years, like I'm just going to take the guy I think that's a little bit safer. They both like use their legs a bunch, so there's always injury risk there when your quarterback's running around. But I think the way Josh Allen takes hits, the way that he kind of goes for it, I don't think that they protect him as much as like the Eagles protect Hurts, like with their design runs. Um, and there's been talk too, like about change, like Josh Allen wanting to change the way he plays, which may if he's more from the pocket, that's good. He might not get it lessens his chances of getting hurt. But if he's trying to change his whole play style in the off season, I mean it's a slight unknown factor. So I think I like them both. I think they're both gonna have really good years. I just think Hurts is a little safer.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I think for the most part, as I look at our rankings, we're pretty much in all agreement for the top 10. I see our biggest drift here is me having Aaron Rodgers at 11. Johnny, you have him at 18, and Blake, you have him at 17. Um, I'm gonna let you guys start this off. Why do you got him a little lower? You guys got him in like bye week flyer vibes right here. I mean, I got him as a QB1 in a 12 team. So, who wants to start off, Johnny?
What, you want me to tell you why I'm low on Rodgers?
I do. Please give me
I mean,
something.
I mean, he's just a little like flamed out from my perspective. Like, I liked what I saw when they threw him in the preseason, but I think they knew he needed the reps, kind of like everyone did, and we'll just have to see. I think he'll be able to support maybe a few. I think hopefully Garrett Wilson at a high level, but you know Vegas has him right around just over 4,000 yards. They think he's going to be the first Jet to throw for over 4,000 yards in a forever, whatever that is. And Vegas usually knows what they're talking about, but I wouldn't be too scared to take the under with him taking one harsh fall. And, even watching him run around in that preseason game, I was worried if he fell hard, he might hurt himself. He just looks frail for his age. So I'm him a little bit. I'm going with some of the more younger, more talented guys. I do think people have also been calling out to me a lot, like the future of quarterback is getting younger. It used to be that you had to have these older guys who were wiser, but now you're seeing Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, all these guys who aren't even 28 yet coming into their prime. And so, yeah.
Okay. How about you, Blake? Why are you so low on him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think, first of all, he doesn't run anymore at all, which is, not something you really want your 39-year-old quarterback to be doing. But that caps his upside, I think. Like especially looking
Yeah.
at like around similar ADP with like Anthony Richardson. Um, Daniel Jones has rushing upside. I'd probably rather have Daniel Jones. I have Daniel Jones just one spot ahead of him, and that's largely why I think that obviously Rodgers is going to beat you with his head, and he's going to beat you with his arm. His arm's not what it used to be, but it's still top tier. He can put the ball where he wants to put it, and he's a smart guy. Like honestly, this is one of those that could backfire for me. Like I could definitely see a situation where he has his best fantasy season in a couple of years. I think the team will be good. This isn't an indictment on like his actual success this year. I don't think that they're going to be a bad team like the Broncos were last year after trading for Russ. I don't. A lot of people are talking like they have similar vibes. I don't see it being quite like in the same situation there, but yeah, I just think his upside's capped. I don't think he brings that. dynamicism that he once did in the position, and I'd rather take the upside with other guys that are around that ADP.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you my take on what I have him so high. And this, first off, he's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I don't think I have to say that. This guy won back-to-back MVPs. I feel like he was crippled by the young wide receiver core that he had last year. Um, and he did the best he could with, the inexperience that he had at the wide receiver position. And I really think he's got new and better weapons around him in this Jets offense. The Jets went out and gave up a lot of draft capital for him. So this is their guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see like this Brett Favre 40-year Viking, where Brett Favre was really relevant at an old age as a Viking. And if I can get that from Aaron Rodgers, I would love that. That's why I got him at 11. And I just feel like you guys are a little tad too low on him, but that's okay. This is a difference of opinion. I think he is our
Favre on the Vikings.
Yeah, he was good. He was good. I don't know if you guys remember. He was.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what he finished that year.
Get that, I would be real stoked for Rodgers.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think to Blake's point, and we can move on. Like, it's not about fading Rodgers. It's that there's really so many QB ones almost. Like, there's guys like Geno going right in front of him, who I said could finish top 5. Like, you got these guys who could be QB1s all the way up to even Rodgers.
well, you guys have Daniel Jones, both of you, ahead of Rodgers. You guys sticking with that?
Because of the legs, and because we think he could rush for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards, maybe, right? And that there's some upside there. 3,000 passing yards, 15 touchdowns. He's already going to be ahead of Rodgers throwing for 4,000 and 20 touchdowns.
I get it. I get the legs. It feels weird putting Daniel Jones in front of
But this is
Aaron
fantasy
Rodgers.
football, and I think that is a lesson for, like, maybe if you are newer. It's about scoring points, right? Like, it's great when players, they conflict or they work, like Alvin Kamara. I love him, and he scores points. That's great, but you got to go for guys. Just, everyone likes Rodgers, but his points have tailed off in the years. And I think Blake brought up a good point. A lot of it probably is because he's a little less mobile. And some of those big plays happen when you're running around outside the pocket, right? Like they do with Mahomes. So.
All right. Well, we got Rodgers at 16 as our combined ranking. We have Daniel Jones at 17, Wilson at 18, and we got Kenny Pickett at 19. And I feel like that was pretty high considering what we saw from him last year. But I got him at 20. Johnny's got him at 23. Blake's got at 20. So I think we're pretty much in agreement that he is like a QB2 that possibly have some upside. So, Blake, I'm going to let you take off on this one. Give me your take on Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, at 20, you'd be drafting him higher, obviously, than he performed last year. So with that said, you're expecting a big step forward, and I can see that happening. I see a clear path to more success on the football field, more success for fantasy. I just think that whole offense, drafted around similar times, I think they are going to rise together. It's almost like these teams, like, you start building a culture, and I think the players feed off of each other. Especially, we've seen Pickens just like tear it up this offseason. There's a lot of question marks around his like separation and route running and stuff, but he's just proven time and time again that he can be that alpha receiver. And you pair him with Deontay Johnson. Freiermuth is that guy that every quarterback needs that blanket over the middle of the field to get easy yards. You pair that with Najee out of the backfield and Jaylen Warren coming on strong. And, I like that offense. I think there's enough pieces there for him to hit that 20 ADP, that QB 20 ADP. And yeah, I just think the line's better. I think the game's going to slow down for him. And I like players, potential breakout players who there's like a clear adjustment that can be made for that breakout to happen. Like for Pickett, it's his red zone efficiency. He was not good in the red zone last year, and I would argue that he, it's enough to say that he got them in the red zone quite a bit. I think he had a better year, and at least like the offense looked better than I thought it would last year moving the ball. It just, once they got to the red zone, he had a 39% completion percentage inside the 20, but he still had a nice TD to interception ratio. I mean, he didn't throw picks inside the 20. They ended a lot of those drives with field goals. I think with the game slowing down, the offensive line being better, I think with the weapons around him having another year in that offense and that scheme, I think they're going to click a little bit more this year. And listen, I don't think he's going to be a top 15 quarterback this year, but I do like his ADP.
Yeah, consensus right now has him at quarterback 19, so we're right about
Yeah,
in that range. So,
yeah, it's not even that crazy to say.
Johnny, you're actually the lowest on the list on Pickett. Why don't you give me your take on him?
So I liked a little bit of what I saw with the preseason. He was putting the ball where it needed to be for his receiver to make a play, but he was playing against backups, right? So I think people have kind of been hyping that up a little bit, and I think that's been pumping some of it. I think he didn't move the ball in the red. To your point, didn't score a lot of touchdowns. I think there was one wide receiver who caught a touchdown on his team last year, and he didn't turn the ball over a lot at the end of the year either. And I think at a certain point, they are going to have to turn this guy loose. And we'll have to see if he can actually throw the ball up and down the field. I didn't see it last year. The guy wears gloves. I'm out.
Okay. the gloves. Got it. Okay.
There is something to be said for the aesthetics of a quarterback with gloves on. He does not look necessarily quite as professional as the other players. I will mention though too, we're talking about quarterbacks with legs. I mean, Kenny Pickett is definitely. I don't think a lot of people realize that he is fairly
Yeah.
athletic. I think he can get a
Fair
lot more
enough.
with his legs this year too. I could see him having a similar career trajectory as Daniel Jones. So like maybe, and to be honest, like maybe it's not this year. I think it could be, but and if we're talking about positive, touchdown regression for players like Deontay Johnson, who to your point did not score a touchdown last year, didn't catch one, but I think everybody in the fantasy community is expecting him to catch at least one, and a lot of guys are betting on him to get to that 8 touchdown mark. That means that Kenny Pickett's going to throw touchdowns. I mean, he can't catch balls in the end zone if it's not from Kenny Pickett. So I think positive regression indicates some positive steps forward for the whole offense and especially Pickett.
Yeah, I think he kind of had like an outlier year of throwing the football when we talk about touchdowns. It was a bit low. I don't. It was a weird year for Kenny Pickett, and the ceiling is nothing but up for him. So he does carry some like dark horse QB1 upside. I mean, I haven't heard pretty much anyone talk about Kenny Pickett. So we got him a little high. We got him about where consensus is, so that's fair.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have Stafford at 20, Derek Carr at 21, Jordan Love at 22, Purdy at 23. We have Kyler Murray at 24. I just want to kind of make a quick note on Kyler Murray. Right now, it's kind of hard to range his ranking because we really don't know his timetable for coming back. He's pretty much a surefire to miss time this season, but how much time is pretty much unknown at this point. But right now, he's at QB 24. He's pretty much a good stash if you want to pick him up at the end of your drafts. So just keep that in mind. Moving on, we got Young at 25.
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
Because I mentioned this in our mock draft video, but I think the smart play with Kyler is to try and get him in the last round of your draft and stash him on IR.
Yeah.
Add an extra. You get an extra pick that way.
I agree.
I like that. I actually am going to do that if I can. If everything works out, because I like getting a little risky with my last pick. And so if it's some guy that I end up having to grab off of waivers anyways or their free agency, then so be it, right? Because it's probably going to be some guy that no one was going to draft anyways that has some crazy upside. Like I think Tank Dell will probably go undrafted in this 10-team league I'm going to do tomorrow night. That's not even a good example because there will be so much better players than that in it, or not better players, but better opportunity, maybe even more upside. But a guy like him who could just break loose, fun pick, you could get him for free after you get Kyler. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean,
you're just taking the bottom line is you're just taking advantage of your league settings. It's always a good idea to work it. Try and work as many angles as possible. Try and put yourself in position to succeed. It's always better to have more players to take a shot on than less players. So.
Yeah, I agree. And we don't even know what his upside is right now. He's coming back from a surgery. Who knows how much he's going to be running the ball. I believe his injury wasn't even a contact injury. It was just him running and, he did a juke move and tore up his knee. So I don't know how much he's going to be running when he comes back. It's a big unknown, but yeah, think about drafting him at the end of your drafts. We got Bryce Young at 25, Sam Howell 26, CJ Stroud 27, Jimmy Garoppolo at 28, and we have Ryan Tannehill at 29. And
Jesus Christ.
yes, yes, he's pretty low. Johnny, you actually got him at 25. We both have him at 30. Why are you a little higher on Ryan Tannehill than us?
It just seems like the fade there is crazy. Like, I just don't know if he's that bad of a quarterback that everybody thinks he is. I think he has had a little trouble staying healthy, but that's definitely one of the notes I put in here. I think they did try and upgrade the offensive line. They got Peter Skoronsky, who, I think Arthur Smith from the Falcons called him boring in his interview, but that was about the only knock on the guy. They say he could be a future Hall of Famer. I've seen a couple of plays with him struggling in the preseason, but I do think he'll find his footing. He looked really good uh, coming out of college, and I think they tried to upgrade that line for him. In the full games, he was healthy last year, playing 90+% of the snaps because he was just in and out of some of those games with a nagging injury to his ankle. He scored 15.1 points per game in those games. He's playing over 90% of the snaps. I think he's got decent weapons, right? Like people are getting excited about Chig Okonkwo. He's got a better receiver than he's had since as good of one since AJ Brown, right? When he was young in there. So Andy's got Burks, so I think will come out a little bit more now that he's not the he doesn't have to have the pressure of being the wide receiver one. And then he also like Tyjae Spears, I think is going to be a great safety valve underneath for him as someone to just dump off passes when he's under pressure. I think if he stays healthy, he's had multiple like top 8 finishes as a fantasy QB, another top
Yes.
12 finish. He's been a QB1 before. We're at the very end of the draft, right? Like if this is a guy in a 2 QB league or, even a 12 team and somebody stacked quarterback and you need a backup, this guy's not as bad of an option as people are making him. The last thing I'll say is I think that the D will have to respect, or the defense will have to respect that they can run the ball with Henry, right? And they might load that box up even. And that just makes it even easier for a guy like Tannehill to hopefully score some points. So
Okay, I like that, and that's a fair point. I think we kind of Ryan Tannehill's all but forgotten that he did flash some QB1 upside in his career. I mean, this is a guy that's been there and he has done that. So I mean, he's got Hopkins coming over. Why not, right? It could happen. It could be. It wasn't a flash in the pan. He did it in Miami as well. He did it as a Titan. So how about you, Blake? Anything you want to add in?
I just think we're all kind of fading Hopkins too. Like, I mean, he's a great player, but I think like part of Hopkins' ADP is baked into the fact that Tannehill's his quarterback, and also the offense is going to be very run heavy. And he's older too. I mean, a lot of people, Hopkins would be a top 2, second round, third round pick if not for those factors. So if you're gonna take that approach with Hopkins, I think you have to think similarly with Tannehill. But yeah, I mean, when I was doing my rankings, like it was something that I thought about, like should he be this low? Because he's a nice floor play. I was looking at his year last year; it's better than people think. They've drafted 2 quarterbacks the last 2 years, so there's always that pressure that he gets replaced, at any given point in the season. Is the only thing I would say.
Okay. All right. Well, we're actually going to move on. Tannehill was at 29. And to kind of round out the list, we had Ritter at 30, Mac Jones at 31, and we were all in agreement for Baker Mayfield as 32. But we're going to move on to wide receivers. Our wide receiver rankings, this is probably the nitty and gritty. This is where the many players are. We did a top 50 because there's just so many good wide receivers. It's so hard to fit all of them on one page. But we tried our best, and we're gonna get into it. So right off the rip, Johnny's got a kind of I don't know if it's spicy. He said it's spicy, but I'm gonna let him run with it. He's got Jamar Chase as his overall wide receiver 1 this season over Jefferson. And Johnny, I'm gonna just kind of let you fly off the handle. Go ahead, give us your take on this.
So just real quick, right? People are taking JJ 101. That's almost all agreed upon. And I'm not necessarily arguing that you deviate from that. You know what you're going to get. He's produced. But I just am hammering home this point that Chase is equally as good and in equally as good of a situation. So let's walk through the situation real quick. He has a better QB in Joe Burrow than Kirk Cousins. No one will argue that. They have a connection that stems from college. The Bengals are a better offense that people probably would expect to score more points than the Vikings. Now, the Vikings have been good, but they also lost Cook. And I think this could be the year where, maybe it's not, it could be just as good, but the Bengals is still up there with the Chiefs, right? I also think Chase, in my humble opinion, is just a slightly more talented player with like a more absolute elite level speed. He was a more highly touted prospect. He was a top 5 pick after he sat out for a year. Like the guy has special traits. And I think that if he wouldn't have been injured last year, he would have finished with a better sophomore season than Justin Jefferson. And it just would have been a very close decision in kind of like it is to me now is kind of my point. And I do think he might even score, just be a little bit better with contested catch. I don't even want to say that out loud. Not better contested catches than Jefferson, but him and Burrow have a red zone connection that is really strong, where he can throw him, a fade or something like that, and he can go up and get it. And so I think he's an absolute stud, and I wouldn't mind taking him 101.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would really look at you sideways if you decided to take Jamar Chase at the 101 over Jefferson. I mean, I personally think Chase has more touchdown upside. And if Chase is going to be the overall wide receiver one this year, it's going to be because he scored 13 touchdowns versus Jefferson having 7. Something along those lines. And I can see that actually happening. Jamar's due for a big year. If you want to take Jamar over Jefferson, I'm not going to argue it. Who knows? They both have that crazy upside. I can see either one finishing wide receiver 1. So, anything for you, Blake?
Bro, they're both so good. I
Yeah.
mean, you're telling me give me the 102, honestly, and I'll take the one you didn't. The only thing that I would add, and this is something that I've thought about, I know you guys will talk about it in a sec, are not as high on T. Higgins, but it does sort of it takes a card out of your deck, taking Chase there, because then at the turn, the 2-3 turn, like Higgins is sitting there too, so you obviously don't want to draft Chase and Higgins. If you draft Jefferson, you can take Higgins in the second or third round of that turn, and it's a little bit more comfortable. It's a guy that you can't take if you take Chase, pretty much.
Right.
So that comes down to just a little bit of a strategy play, but they're both so good, man. And coming from a Higgins dynasty owner, Burrow looks to chase his side every single time first, every single time. And if he has any separation, that ball's going to him. And usually he catches it for at least 20 yards. Sometimes he scores. A lot of the times he scores. He's an absolute beast. His after the catch too, man. I mean, he just does everything.
He's just fun to watch, man.
They're both fun to watch. I mean, Jefferson too, and Jefferson's gonna score more touchdowns. I mean, that's the argument that he could have even a better year than he had last year, 1,700 yards. But he had awful touchdown luck last year. I'm taking Jefferson 101, but it's so close, man. Like I'd honestly rather have the 102 this year.
Okay, I agree with that. I think for the most part, I think we agree mostly on our top 10. I don't see huge discrepancies on our rankings. Even I'm gonna actually skip to wide receiver 18 for us, and I'm gonna go into T. Higgins, another Bengals wide receiver. And I personally feel like T. Higgins at wide receiver 18 is fine. Consensus ranking has him at 14. He's going in the second round of most fantasy drafts, and I feel like you were taking him at his absolute ceiling right there. And I'm not a huge T. Higgins guy. His best year was last year, and he finished as the wide receiver 18, and Jamar Chase had to miss some time for that to happen. So personally for me, I don't like drafting people at their absolute ceilings, especially in the second round. He's his, if Jamar Chase is potentially going to have 13 touchdowns in a year, then T. Higgins is capped at some point. So that's personally how I feel about it. I have him as wide receiver 17. Johnny, you got him at 18. And Blake, you actually have him at 14. You have him, you're highest on him.
Yeah,
so
I'll take this because
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you can. I've heard that argument that if to take Chase there, you would be drafting him at a ceiling. But Devontae Smith, second wide receiver,
You mean
in
Higgins,
the Eagles
right?
offense. Yeah, Higgins.
Okay.
But last year, let's look at wide receiver twos on good offenses. Devontae Smith was wide receiver 9 last year, and scored a lot of touchdowns. And Waddle, I believe, was either 8 to 11 as well. I think if you take Higgins at 14, there's a pretty good chance that he doesn't score better than the wide receiver 14. But it's not. I don't think it's crazy. I think he's really talented. He's a size matchup nightmare. I mean, he wins on all three levels. He catches contested balls, and when if they didn't have Chase, let's talk about, because Higgins was hurt last year too. I mean, he missed a bunch of games. His points per game basis is why everybody is still high on him in that second wide receiver tier. It's because of when he's on the field, he is just as good as anybody's wide receiver one. He'd be wide receiver one on most teams.
Fair. That's a fair point.
So wait, I want to touch on this real quickly though, because I did have a separate tier and I pushed down both Devontae Smith and T. Higgins, and that was intentional. And it's because they are not the number one on their team. They're not the target earner alpha. Maybe Devontae Smith did have more catches, right? But like you're picking Brown over Devontae Smith every time, and you know that Hurts has that special relationship with both, sure. But I think he really likes Batman and AJ Brown, right? And so like I say that because I agree with everything you said, Blake, but if I'm taking Chase at the 101, I'm fading Higgins. I'm excited about that. Hopefully I'm getting one of these meaty RB ones that's falling to the end of the second, something like that, right? Or another strong wide receiver. But I did push, let's walk through it real quick. A couple of guys on my side up above Higgins because I felt like they were the bigger target earner, if that makes sense. So like Amari Cooper, I have higher than T. Higgins because of that reason, right? I think he is the bona fide wide receiver one in that offense, kind of the same with Keenan Allen. And I think those are some examples of players that you and I kind of interchanged our values on, Blake. Like you had them higher, vice
Yeah,
versa. But
yeah. To be
that's
clear,
my
like,
reasoning. And I am lower than consensus on Devontae Smith
Also,
and T. Higgins, and that's why. I just wanted to clarify.
I don't think taking Higgins in the second is like a surefire miss. You're not missing. I mean, if he finishes wide receiver, 16, it's success. But I personally like other people in that sort of range where, if Garrett Wilson and T. Higgins are still on the board together, which it probably won't happen, but there is a chance that both of them are on the board. I'm taking Wilson. I could take Keenan Allen probably a round later. I'd much rather have Keenan Allen than Higgins. So I just like in that second round option, I rather fade and take someone else in that range.
I mean, bro, you just talked for like 10, 15 minutes about how explosive that Bengals offense is, and that's why you're slightly higher on Chase than Jefferson. I mean, if you're talking about them alongside the Chiefs, then I mean, you can support both guys. I think I'm obviously very high on Keenan and Amari Cooper. I think they're going to have really nice years. Both those guys have injury concerns. They're a bit older. Chase has his own, or I mean, Higgins has his own. He gets banged up. He plays really physically. But I don't see where, because where you're taking him in that 2-3 turn, if everybody drafts how you would draft, I mean, Olave's gone, Waddle's gone. You have guys like Stevenson that's there. I would take him over Stevenson. You're looking at Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews, Devontae
I
Smith,
take
T.
Mark
Higgins.
Andrews.
I might even.
Take Mark Andrews.
I'm fading Higgins. We don't have to get into it too far, but
No,
I'm
that's fine.
basically fading him
I'm just
so
saying.
far. By having him at wide receiver 18 like I do, I wouldn't buy him till the end of the third. And I love John's point that and I might still pass on him depending on who's there, to be honest. Like I really mean that, just because the points per game or the actual finish, the games he finished, like, or his PPR finish is like he's always a wide receiver too, right? Like I don't think he is going to be a top 5 wide receiver with that sort of. I might even have Chris Godwin above him because he's a perfect example. When everyone was
I
sleeping
wouldn't
on
go
Chris
that far,
Godwin a
but
few years ago, and you get him at pick 58, he's the number one target earner in that offense. Chris Godwin finished top 5 in PPR scoring. If I get that the quarterback is the concern, but if they find a way to get this guy the ball and he stays healthy, like, just again, my opinion, because that's the type of targets that guy's earning.
okay.
And I just think that you even admitted it, Blake. He's going to be looking Chase's way every time. And Higgins, you have to be the best available or ability is availability. I get people like his points per game scoring, but he's got to be on the field for me. And he plays a physical style. He likes the contested catches. He's kind of akin to a Mike Williams, but maybe a little bit better health, which that's why
He's
I
more
won't fade him
talented than Mike
completely.
Williams too.
But similar play
Let's not talk
style, but
about.
like an upgrade. Sure, maybe, but he ran like a 4.6, I think
Yeah,
Higgins did.
I just
And he's not a
yeah,
burner, but he can still.
I I think you're being selective though with your. I mean, he looks Chase's way first. A
Let's
lot of the time, but he throws the ball 50 times a game. Like plenty
let's
of targets for the number 2 in that offense.
let's move on, guys.
Yeah,
We
for
spent
sure.
plenty of time on T Higgins. We got
It's crazy, man. We'll have to look back at this at the end of the year.
Well, we're definitely going to do this because I feel strongly about this. I'm not going to lie. But moving on, we got Debo at 19, Christian Watson at 20, Hopkins at 21, Drake London at 22, and we have DJ Moore at 23. Our overall ranking is 23. That's a little lower than consensus right now. I believe DJ Moore is 19. I have him personally at 19. Johnny, you got him at 25. Blake, you have him at 24. I'm not actually high on DJ Moore at all. I have been burned by DJ Moore several times. I think he's a great wide receiver. I think he's a great real life wide receiver. But you guys are way lower on DJ Moore than I am. And I mean, you have right now, you would rather take Drake London over DJ Moore. Both of you. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, him and Watson.
Okay. Hopkins? Yeah. Both of you have Hopkins over DJ Moore.
Yeah, I like Hopkins still a little bit more.
Do I really?
You do.
Oh,
now, this one actually surprised me because I felt like we were all pretty low on Debo, but you have Debo Samuel over DJ Moore.
Yeah, I like that. If Debo can run, Debo can stay healthy, that's a good offense, right?
Okay. I mean, listen, I'm not gonna sit here and make a whole case why I'm taking DJ Moore. Because, like I said, I am pretty low on him.
Your point, though, about Drake London, because there's some QB questions there too, right? And I think that's the question with DJ Moore isn't the talent; it's whether being with Justin Fields is going to yield fantasy points.
Yeah, and to your credit, I mean that's pretty much the line, right? Drake London, DJ Moore. We could put Terry McLaurin in that kind of group of wide receivers. They all kind of fall into that range of like wide receiver twos, kind of bunched up in the same tier. But yeah, we'll move on. Ayuk at 24. We have Chris Godwin at 25. Terry McLaurin at 26. Lockett at 27. Kirk at 28. And right now we have Jerry Jeudy at 29. We just got news today that he's not going on IR. So that's good news. And that's potentially that he's not going to miss 4 games or more. So he could be coming back sooner rather than later. So we might have to boost him up just a tad in this rankings. I'll give to you guys. Would you be moving up Jerry Jeudy in the future?
It's tough, man. I know me and Johnny both really like the player. He was definitely on my list of must drafts this year before the hamstring injury. He's not going on IR, but he could still miss 3 games. That's he could miss 4 games still. It would look like a dumb decision not to put him on IR, but it's not guaranteed to come back. It's a positive sign for sure. I have to bump him up a little bit for that, but it's still a concern. Hamstring injuries don't go away; they linger. And if you're spending top 5th round pick on a guy that with that kind of injury concern, I don't love that play.
And it's a hammy, so it could linger.
Those soft tissue injuries. Yeah, I just think in the 6th he's money, but maybe not earlier than that.
That's fair. I got him at 31. Johnny's got him at 29. You got him at 34. So we all got him kind of in that wide receiver 3 range.
That was before though. That was my ranking before the news today. So
yeah,
he'd be a little.
Yeah, the news today doesn't change much for me, guys. Just to be frank, like he left on a car. We know it was something. We know soft tissue injuries can linger. We know the season's like right around the corner. So I'm just like, I'm being cautious with him. I love him. I have him higher than you guys, but I think I have him that high, hoping that even if he misses 2 or 3 weeks, which is what I expect, that he can come back, stay healthy, and start producing.
Okay.
But I think you've taken him knowing he's going to miss a few weeks, and I feel really comfortable getting him at the end of the 6th, 7th round, somewhere around that. But I don't want to spend a 5th round pick or anything like that on him after the news.
That's fair. We actually have Jahan Dotson at 30. I just want to make a quick point. I've kind of made my case for Dotson. I really like him as a player. I wish I could move him higher in this rank. It's just really, really hard with like all the players that kind of fall into this group. Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, I feel, are going to cap themselves. We don't know what Sam Howell's going to be this year. Jahan Dotson kind of reminds me of just like a mini Terry McLaurin on the field. And I don't know if this Washington offense can support 2 wide receivers. And I don't know how good Sam Howell is to support 2 wide receivers. So I got him at wide receiver 34. Johnny, you got him at 28. Blake, you got him at 27. I'm probably the lowest on him. And like I said, I wish I could move him higher, but there's just guys like, I guess I could probably move him in front of Jerry Jeudy. But like, even then, I still would probably take Jerry Jeudy with him missing 2 games over Jahan Dotson, but that's just me. You guys want to share your opinion on Dotson?
Yeah, it's a bet. You're betting on Bieniemy and his scheme to work outside of Kansas City. I think it can, and I think Howell, has shown he hasn't he hasn't done a lot. He's in minimal appearances, though he has looked good. He at least has the poise, I think, to keep it from becoming a dumpster fire. I don't envision Jacoby Brissett coming in, earlier than necessary. I don't think it's going to go that way. I think the offense is going to be good enough with that scheme, with just the overall culture and Washington is getting better, and I think this is a good year to capitalize on that. There's a bunch of late round guys on that offense that I'm willing to take a shot on, like Gibson. And the other thing is McLaurin's toe injury. Like, that's not something that gonna make me fade him for like a long time. Like, I don't think it's gonna impact his year overall. But the first couple of weeks, I think Dotson's gonna eat. And then if you want to trade him after week 2, trade him after week 2. But I really do think he's going to start the year on fire. He's one of my favorite 7th round picks.
Okay, awesome. After Dotson, we have Dante Johnson at 31, Pittman Jr., Marquise Brown, Mike Williams, Pickens, Addison, Flowers, Mike Evans, Brandon Cooks. And actually, we're going to get into Gabe Davis here. We have him all the way down, Gabe Davis at 41. I don't know if you guys remember, people were calling for a Gabe Davis breakout year last year. It did not happen. Johnny, take me into Gabe Davis. You got him at 42. Blake's got him at all the way down to 48. I got him at 39. I'm the highest on him. You're the middle guy right here. So, Johnny, give me your take on Gabe Davis. We have him as a combined ranking at 41 right now.
I feel like I'm high on Gabe Davis. At this point, I'm like starting to get so high on all the hate from Gabe Davis that I might like just take him with the first pick and just see what happens, because people would hate it. People would hate it if he actually ended up like outproducing T. Higgins, for example. But no joke, like that's an example of kind of the role I see him in. Like, he is the wide receiver too. He is not the main target earner, but he's in a great offense. He could pop off and score 3 touchdowns. He's scored 4 against the Chiefs in a playoff game that mattered, right? Like, this guy is someone who is in a high-powered offense and has proven he is streaky, but I like it in terms of I want to have players that I can throw in and win the game. You know what I mean? I don't want to have a guy who's going to get 3 catches for 30 yards, and he can do that too, but that you're almost like, man, that's almost his ceiling, right? There's some guys that's almost their ceiling, but the ceiling with this guy is almost limitless just because of who he's attached to with Allen and some of the games that the Bills are going to play and how high scoring they might be. So I like Gabe Davis. I think he's just a pretty talented guy, and I think that the hate's a little out of control, and he's a value.
I feel like every time there's a pro talk about Gabe Davis, we have to bring out that Kansas City game where he scored those 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
I feel like every time we talk about Gabe Davis in a pro, we got to bring up that game because it was a monstrous game. And I think that's actually where the hype came from last year, because of how he ended this season on that crazy, monstrous performance. And I was one of those guys calling for the Gabe Davis breakout, and it didn't happen, and I got stuck holding the bag. And it looked pretty good for the beginning of the year. I thought he was actually going on his way. He was catching touchdowns left and right. But He's all the way at 39. I mean, the upside's still there. I'm doubling down. I think it's going to happen this year. I like Gabe Davis. I got him at 39. Blake, you're on the total opposite side of the spectrum at 48. Take me through your take.
Well, first of all, he's a value at 48. I think we can agree on that.
Yes.
Yeah, no, listen, man, like the situation is not different than it was last year. In fact, he has more competition for targets. They lost Isaiah McKenzie, but that's who he was competing with targets for last year, Isaiah McKenzie. And he had an 18.2% target share, which was good for 43rd in the entire league. You could say that the offense is a juggernaut, but it has been for the last 3 years. The situation's been in his favor the last 2 years. And he hasn't done it. He's shown it in streaks. And those are my least favorite players, to be honest, are those streaky guys too. Because when are you going to start them? You never know when it's going to come, and it's honestly more often than not that he bites in the ass. So there's the target share percentage, which I don't like, and he just doesn't do anything that makes me think that he's going to get better. I don't think he's talented as a route runner. I don't think he's miserable yards after the catch. He was 67th in total yards after the catch last year with 148 of his 136 receiving yards were after the catch.
Ankle,
so he doesn't
right
the ankle, but okay, but
I mean, yak is kind of tough when you're lingering or you're lumbering, right?
Okay, but he doesn't score touchdowns. I don't know. He's not fast.
Gabe Davis does score touchdowns, and he does that pretty well. That's probably the only thing
he can score. He can string touchdowns together, but he doesn't. It's not. I think it's more often than not that he burns you. So
right.
I'm low on him just because.
Hate, dude. I love it.
If he doesn't score the touchdown, he gives you 3 for 40, and you're like, "What happened?" I get it.
3 for 40 on a good day, yeah.
If that, right? Okay. Well, we're gonna move on from Gabe Davis.
I was saying, last thing on streaky players. If yes, it sucks, but it's more of a thing like if you got injuries stacking up, at least you've got a guy who could go out there and perform and hit for you. And the other thing is if they go off in week 1 or 2, maybe you get out of the Gabe Davis business and you capitalize, right? So there's some risk there, but I like taking a little risk.
He's our wide receiver 41, so you're drafting him as like your back end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. So he's like a bench player, and you want a bench player with upside that's going to fill in for a bye week. Gabe Davis should be that guy. So I think we can all agree at wide receiver 41. I mean, why not swing for the fence, you know? But moving on, we're going to skip down to wide receiver 46 with Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's actually a really hard name to say. I got him at 47. Johnny, you were the highest on him at 39. Blake, you got him at 42. And that's our overall ranking of 46. Johnny, why don't you start us off since you're the highest on him at 39?
I mean, I'll keep it short with JSN. Just one of my favorite prospects watching out of college. Like, I think I'm an eye test believer. And if you look like you're gaining a lot of separation, you look like you'd be the toughest man to cover on earth. That's kind of how I feel when I watch him run routes. And 5-star recruit coming out of college, right? This has been something evident ever since he was young that he's better than his peers. And I do think there's enough room for 3 wide receivers to eat in that offense. I don't think Geno targeted tight ends on his team a whole lot last year. And if he did, they're not the best players. Like you know this, Blake, he's throwing to Noah Fant, who's an old Bronco. And, as Broncos fans, maybe I'm fading him a little too much, but I just think that there could be 3 solid pass catchers in an offense. We've seen that time and time again that a good offense can support 3 pass catchers. And I think it could be 3 wide receivers this year for the Seahawks, and he could have a great year.
Okay. I'm actually on the total opposite side of the spectrum here. I got him at 47, and again, to kind of make this short and sweet, I don't believe there's room in this offense for 3 pass catchers. They brought in a running back. They got 2 running backs with Walker and now Sharp. I feel like they're going to try to run the ball. This has always been a team that's kind of favored to run the ball. Every Pete Carroll team dating back to Marshawn Lynch days have kind of favored to run the ball. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a really good real life player. but I don't think this is going to be the year where you could just throw him in your lineup and feel comfortable. Again, he's our wide receiver 46, so hopefully you're not drafting him as your wide receiver 2 in any leagues. But I'm way off him. I think his years are coming. It's not going to be this year. They got Lockett, they got Metcalf. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I think they run the ball overall. So, Blake, you want to add anything?
No, I mean I would just echo what Johnny said. Like those are traits almost the opposite of Gabe Davis that I'm super willing to bet on. Yeah, I can't let it go. No, I'm just kidding. But no, those are traits. Those are traits that translate, right? That short area quickness. I mean, his 3-cone time, we all know about it. It was legendary at the combine. You see it on tape. He gets open. He's a dog for sure. I like the player. Not necessarily this year. My whole thing is I want to take one of those rookies, and it's hard to try and pick one if they're all there. I think if I were to, I don't know what my rankings say off the top of my head, but I think he's below Flowers and Addison for me this year, at least.
Okay, he's below. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got him below.
Like I'd rather have Addison and
You
Flowers.
got Flowers at
That's
33. I'd rather have Flowers too. That's
Yeah.
just me. But okay, we'll move on. To round off our wide receivers, we have Michael Thomas at 47, Juju Smith-Schuster at 48, Sky Moore at 49, and we got Kadarius Toney at wide receiver 50. And that's going to be it for our wide receiver rankings. We're going to be actually moving on to the running backs. And let's see. We kind of agree on pretty much everything all the way up to the top 10. I just want to make a quick point because obviously some news kind of broke today about Jonathan Taylor missing his first 4 games. He's going to be on the PUP. And he potentially could be on there longer. This is like a really weird situation where I wish I had all the information to tell you exactly what to do. But I've been telling people to fade Jonathan Taylor for weeks now, and this is why. Because he's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. We don't know when he's coming back. We don't know if it's a contract. We don't know how healthy it is. We have no answers right now. And right now we have Jonathan Taylor I have him at 10. You guys have him at 11. He's our he's our running back 9. And obviously that's going to change because since he's going to miss the first 4 games.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to move him down to about, I would say, running back 18. I think that feels right to me. Do you guys want to comment on this real quick? Where would you be moving him down to?
I want to hop in and shamelessly, if you made it this far, I want to shamelessly plug my Twitter/X account. It's at your FF analyst.
I'm going to put it in the subscription for you. I'm going to put it right in there.
And I am writing for Player Profiler. I'm covering the AFC South, and I actually wrote a recent article on Jonathan Taylor, and we'll continue to cover the situation. So if you want more of my advice and insight, I am breaking it down on my Twitter. I'm posting all my articles that I'm posting for Player Profiler on my Twitter.
Where you got
Blake,
it?
you tell the.
Hold on, where do you got him?
I'm not telling
So
you.
you want to make him go to
articles.
the Twitter? Okay, all right.
Okay, go to Twitter. It's there.
It's just a nasty situation, man. I don't think anybody wants any part of that, especially 6 hours after that news broke. I think we were all pretty excited for the possibility that he got traded. I never thought that he would necessarily, but now it's worst case scenario. And I'll move him to RB19 right now, just behind Dameon Pierce. But honestly, I'm probably not going to draft him at all unless he falls,
He's a total avoid for me.
I'd have to get
touching
considerable value there just because you're missing 4 games at least. And I don't think anybody actually thinks his ankle hurts. And that's even scarier because it's like the ankle's fine and this is still the worst case scenario. Like I think that it could end up being the whole year potentially. And then you're wasting a draft pick. If you like risk and you like to live on the edge, then he's for you. But I wouldn't take him before the 5th at least.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. He's about a 5th round value right now, according to the news that broke. So moving on, we're going to skip to running back 13. We have Travis Etienne. I got him at 14. Johnny, you're the highest on him right now at 9. Blake, you're with me with 14. Johnny, since you're so high on Travis Etienne, and why don't you give me some insight?
RB9 could be the overall RB1, and I think that people are. I think the Bigsby thing. I'll just nip it in the bud, right? Like it's okay. He has a backup. Like he's got a guy who might rotate in and steal a snap or two. Everyone does, right? It's okay that he's capable, and if he goes down and does twist an ankle, they have a player who they can lean on. But they are going to feed this guy. Peterson talked about him rushing for 1,600 yards. And again, back to the eye test thing we talked about with JSN a minute ago. Like watching this guy back in college, I just was amazed by him, and I always love watching him. I think he's an electric player. He's a home run hitter. He's undoubtedly an anti-Jag. He's not just a guy. He is a good running back. And, there's all sorts of little digs you can make at him, but he's going to get the majority of the running back snaps in a great offense. And he could finish as the overall RB1. And that is the take.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to spend actually too much time. I think we're all pretty. I think me and Blake are on with consensus at 14. I believe that's the range he's going in. So this is
I
actually
would
what
happily have him
What's
on my
that?
team. I said I would happily take Travis Etienne for sure. He's just not that high,
Just
but
curious.
pretty high.
Would you take Travis Etienne or would you take T Higgins?
T Higgins, yeah.
Really? Okay. All right. Fair enough. Moving on. We got J.K. Dobbins at 17. I have him at I'm sorry, I keep saying wide receiver. Running back 17. Johnny, you have him at 16. Blake, you have him at 17. I thought me and Blake were the J.K. Dobbins believers, but Johnny, you
Yeah.
actually have him higher, and I thought that was really interesting because I did say I cooled off on J.K. Dobbins a couple videos ago, and I had to move him down because he hasn't been showing up
Yeah.
for training camp. So why do you have him higher than us?
Well, he's playing now, right? And he's second year back. I think some of what you'll see here is I pushed guys down like Javonte Williams, like Brees Hall, who have dealt with those multi-ligament tears, and it's year one back for them. I don't want to expect too much from them from a fantasy perspective. So I think that pushed his ranking up a little bit. And I also kind of moved. I have Aaron Jones at 17, and you guys have Jones above Dobbins in both of your rankings. And I think that's just an example. I like Aaron Jones. I drafted him very high last year, but I also saw that the snap share wasn't what I wanted it to be. He's kind of was in and out of the game with nagging injuries, and they were different ones. And so I want a really tough running back. And one who's going to get, is kind of the unquestioned RB1. I could see him subbing in and out with Dylan a lot, and I think that's where I push Jones. So it's again, we're talking about slight discrepancies here, and I think that's why I end up being high on him. And I don't think I ever said a bad thing about him while you guys were
No,
saying
you
how
do
much you
haven't.
guys love
I just
him.
I just think we were maybe a little over the top compared to consensus rankings.
Yeah.
What I will say about your Aaron Jones take is why I have him higher is obviously the passing upside. I think we're talking about PPR leagues here, and
Yeah, that's a great point.
J.K. Dobbins. I mean, they plan to throw the ball more this year. I don't know how much more. I don't know if he's a guy that can actually catch 30 balls a game. If he can, great. But we haven't seen it up to this point. He hasn't been healthy up until this point. So I got Aaron Jones a little higher than J.K. And yeah, Blake.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of like JK's ability to catch the ball. I think just what it comes down to is every single time that Lamar Jackson is in trouble, he's not going to dump the ball off to a running back. He's going to tuck it and run himself. More so than other running quarterbacks. I mean, he just doesn't dump the ball down. So I'm pretty comfortable having Jones higher than Dobbins. The reason I like Dobbins is just a pure rusher. I think he's so talented, and I think that running game they're going to throw the ball a little bit more, but I think that they're just going to be able to run the ball really well. I could see him getting 15 touchdowns, best case scenario,
That would
and
be
being a league winner.
amazing. That would be amazing.
But on the ground, 15 touchdowns on the ground, I think there's a bit of a risk there. If obviously he probably won't get 15 touchdowns on the ground. That would be awesome, but he probably, let's say anywhere from 8 to 12, and then you're happy with the fifth, sixth round running back there. I don't think. I don't think anybody would turn that down. But I just don't. The risk of the lack of passing game is concerning.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Guys, I'm actually super excited to get into this one for you because I've been waiting the whole time to talk about this guy. We're going to be talking about Alexander Madison. We have him as the overall running back 24.
That didn't get me that excited.
No,
I was like, who we got?
yeah. Listen, I know you guys are not excited about Madison skill wise. I have him at 19. Johnny, you have him at 26. Blake, you did have him at 28. Thank you for moving him down to 23. It feels a little better in my heart, at least, to see that. But I'm going to just kind of jump into this because I just want to make one point and I'm going to let Blake take over. Madison's the guy. That's all I got for you. Blake, take over.
Finally, right?
Good
He's
point.
finally the guy, and it really seems like they want him to be the guy. I was low on him throughout the offseason, the 4.67 40. I thought he had worse draft capital than he did. He was a third-round pick, so the organizations liked him. I guess he's not a second-round pick, but the organization liked him when they drafted him. He's going to get a lot of carries. The thing that I had to do a little bit of research because I have moved him up considerably.
I love it.
The fact that he's only gotten 50% of the snaps in his entire career, 6 games, only 6 games. First of all, that's a lot of tread left on those tires. I mean, if he gets 350 carries this year, I could see Josh Jacobs. Not as talented, I don't think, as Josh Jacobs, but he's got the shelf life on those legs to make it happen. In those 6 games where he got 50% of the snaps, not touches, snaps. I mean, even in those games he didn't get most of the touches. He averages a little over 20 points a game in half PPR. Insane, man. I mean, I forgot how good he was when he came in, and last year, you didn't get to see it as much. Cook played, Cook had the shoulder, but even still, Madison didn't have a year. I had to remind myself how good he was when.
And here's the best part: he's being drafted in the 5th round. Listen, I get it. He's not like a explosive player. He's not the prettiest player, but fantasy points, right? We always talk about
scoring. I can't wait for them to sign Kareem Hunt.
Listen. They're not signing Kareem Hunt.
You were just all stop talking.
No,
you were just saying how washed Kareem Hunt was like less than a week ago, dude. You really think that's going to change anything? I think, yeah,
dude. If you buy the new Madden and you create a franchise and you simulate to week 1, the Vikings have signed Kareem Hunt, and then if you simulate week 1, he runs for 4 touchdowns. So,
oh my god,
Kareem Hunt. Well, I make all of my fantasy decisions based off of Madden simulations, so that's perfect, dude. Yeah, I guess
my point.
Yeah.
Madison scores
I'm
points.
Hunt in the 10th now.
Period. He scores points, guys. I got him at 19. He's going to be your running back 3 in some cases when you're drafting this season.
Love him as an RB2 even.
If you can he catches the ball too. I mean, Kirk Cousins loves checking this ball down. If you could get a ceiling of 2 to 3 catches a game, let's just say 30 yards, that you got a floor of 6 points plus the rushing. I mean, this guy is almost guaranteed to give you 10 points a game. And then if he falls into the end zone, even better. So moving on, I've talked about Alexander Madison pretty much any chance I get. So I'm going to move on for him. I'm going to rattle off some of these names. Followed Madison at 25. We have James Cook, Javonte Williams at 26. We have Swift at 27, White at 28, Montgomery at 29, Dalvin Cook at 30, Isaiah Pacheco at 31, Khalil Herbert at 32, Antonio Gibson at 33, and Brian Robinson at 34. So that's going to be it for our running back rankings. What were you going to say, Blake?
Just real quick. I think this is a really interesting sort of part of the draft this year, this tier break after, let's say, Dalvin Cook, right before Pacheco. I mean, some people will throw Pacheco into this. Just like running back dead zone. I mean, there's so many guys there. I think that it's not a bad idea this year to try and get one of those guys. But the worst case scenario is that you miss all those guys and you have Eckler as your RB1, but then your RB2 is like Khalil Herbert. I think that's dangerous. I just think it's something to be aware of in your drafts that, like, well, those names you might be tempted to take, like Jahan Dotson over one of those guys. If you need a running back, like it drops off a cliff really quickly. So
Dude, I had a
that's a fair
buddy
point.
take Jonathan Taylor and then James Cook and Khalil Herbert. And so now he's
Yeah,
going into the season with James
yeah,
Cook
tough,
and Khalil Herbert.
tough. I like James Cook and Khalil
RIP.
Herbert, but not enough to. Yeah, that's tough.
All right, so now we're going to jump into tight ends, and something just caught my eye when I just looked at the tight ends. Johnny, you actually have T.J. Hawkinson at 5, and then I started doing some some
That
research,
sucks.
and I'm thinking you got a problem with Vikings. You got Chase ahead of Jefferson, you've Barry Madison, and now you got Hawkinson at 5.
Oh yeah, I would have
What
buried him more. You're right. I was like 5. That sounds
what
way
is
too
going
high.
on? What did these
But
Vikings do?
3.
What did they do to you?
Yeah. So wait, I'm just triple checking this. So he's the 4th
He's right. I just
off
looked
the
at it.
board. Yeah, but he's the 4th off the board on sleeper AP. I'm looking at that right now. So people are throwing Kittle in or drafting Kittle in front of him. I have Waller. I do think Daniel Jones has the inability to throw an adequate deep ball at scale, and that's something he can prove me wrong on, right? But I think he'll continue to dump it over the middle if Waller stays healthy. I think he could be the wide receiver or the tight end 3. I'm not drafting him there. I'm not drafting Kittle. I'm not drafting Hawkinson or Pitts, to be honest with you. To me, those are all guys I'd rather load up on skill players like running backs and wide receivers during that period of the draft. So I'm out on Hawk. I'm out
Listen,
on all
and
of those guys.
I'm not out on
That's just
Hawk, but I just don't like where he's going ADP wise. I much like you said, I'd much rather get a wide receiver running back in that range than TJ Hawkinson. So Blake.
That's a spicy take, man. I'm gonna do you one better. If I could guarantee that Darren Waller plays the
Mamma
entire
mia,
season,
that's a spicy meatball.
if I could guarantee Waller plays a healthy 17 games, I would draft him over Mark Andrews.
Phew.
100%.
I mean,
Woo!
Dayball's not like as and I like what you said about Bieniemy and the Redskins, right? Like sometimes the proof is in the pudding leading up to the season. We just don't see it until week 1, and then we're like, oh, that's right. Bieniemy was calling the Chiefs offense for 5 years and actually does know how to run the offense. Like, oh, maybe we all will figure out that Dayball is a good coach and can utilize these players to their abilities, right? And so, yeah, the health's the concern for sure, though.
But just to be clear, I don't think Waller's going to play 17 games,
Yeah,
and so that's why
I said that.
that's why I have Hawkinson just one spot ahead of him. But I'm not. That's a risk that I would take. Waller in the 5th, or sometimes even the late 4th. Honestly, I would take Waller at the 4 or 5 turn sometimes.
All right. We're actually going to move on. I'm going to skip around here. So we got Tyler Higbee. He's our overall tight end 14. I got him at 13. Johnny 17. Blake, you got him at 12. Johnny, you seem to be out on Higbee. I think you've called him a jag. I think that's your favorite word. And listen, Higbee isn't sexy, but he's got these splash games. I think he's a good tight end if you completely punted the position and you want to pick up a later tight end at the end of the draft. I think he can flirt with like tight end 1 upside, and that's not really hard to do when we're talking about tight end position. So, Johnny, I won't get too far into it. Why are you totally out on Higbee?
Yeah, basically a full fade for me. I am at tight end 17. I think I'd even push. I say that I would probably push some of these guys that I have under him. I wouldn't pick him. I think, he had a great year last year. Actually, he finished tight end 6 in PPR scoring. But the depth of target was crazy. One of the worst in the league at 5.7 yards per target. And he actually turned that into 8.6 yards per reception. So 2.9 yards after catch per reception, which is not that bad on paper. But when you watch the film, they schemed this guy crazy open. And the next gen stats actually back that up, that this guy had some of the most separation among any players in the league when being targeted last year. And so I think, if you're Sean McVay, you saw how that looked dumping the ball to Tyler Higbee and basically going out of bounds or falling forward for a yard or two. And you've got to be begging for something more than that. Yes, definition of a jag. I don't think any fan base is getting Tyler Higbee. I keep thinking of T. Higgins. Tyler
We really hate
Higbee.
T. Jesus Christ.
Basically
All
the
that sounds
same
like
players in my mind right now. No.
for real, yeah, they're same player
But,
basically.
yeah, not a field stretcher. Wouldn't get me excited if my team traded for Tyler Higbee tomorrow. I'd rather get some guy with some more upside and who just has a little bit more eye popping ability to me.
Okay. Hey, Blake, you want to
Everything you
comment anything?
mentioned sounded like positive. Like they scheme him open. It's part of what makes McVay's offense so effective is that he knows how to
No, it's a
scheme
great
players.
offense.
Yeah, but
they
if he wants more than dumping it down to Higbee, then maybe they would have drafted a tight end. There's a bunch of tight ends this year, and did they draft a tight end?
traded Jalen Ramsey for a fucking tight end, and that's where I
Which
start
one?
to get in here.
Which one?
With David Long, right? Like, and I'm like,
Do
is
we
this
even
guy
know?
a thing? No,
Yeah, no.
right?
So, like,
but that's my hot, super spicy meatball. Is David
dude, I'm
Long
super comfortable
Mamma
with
mia, that's a spicy meatball.
It's an interesting
All right,
take. I
listen.
don't think Higbee's is going to win you a draft, but I do think that he's a nice option there if you miss
what are
some
we
of those.
doing talking
those
about
tight ends.
Higbee?
Listen, we're at tight end 14. Like this is we've skipped all the good guys. We've gone down to the nitty gritty, and now that we're talking about some, tight end ones, maybe twos. Let's go into your guy, Jake Ferguson here. You both got him at 13, and you're putting egg on my face because I've buried him all the way at 21. And when I gave you guys my rankings, you guys kind of looked at me sideways. And since you guys are so high on him, I'm going to let you get the first at bat. If you're trying to persuade me to move him down to, I don't know, let's say 17. Give me your take, Blake.
Look, I mean, it's hard to say it without laughing. Jake Ferguson at the tight end 13, like that's so it's almost meme worthy. But look, I mean, the position sucks. Like, I don't want.
Yes.
I'm looking for opportunity. I'm not like none of these guys are talented at this point in the draft. None of these guys are burners or freak athletes or ex basketball players. But the one thing I do know is that Dak, and everybody knows this, Dak loves his tight ends. I mean, Dalton Schultz was tight end 12 last year, and that's exactly basically where I think Ferguson's going to finish, just because he plays that position for the Dallas Cowboys. Him and Schultz, if you look up their athletic profiles, Schultz has him beat by a knuckle hair, but it's close, and they're basically the same player. And I've seen enough from him, and there's enough on tape where he's making plays to where he's a jag, but he's not the jaggiest jag. I think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna be tight end 5, but
I mean, Dalton Schultz was a jag, right? I mean, he still showed up.
Yeah.
So,
dude, Berg Jesus, that's the name I've got for him. That guy is gonna take you to the promised land if you draft him. Fade the TE position, take one tight end. It's all you need.
Yes, I love it.
So, is it fair to say this is our tight end sleeper for you guys, Jake Ferguson?
Might be my sleeper the entire draft, dude. I already bought his jersey. Like, it's happening.
Okay. Well, I mean, I couldn't possibly give you. I can't really move him as a tight end 13 in my personal rankings. I do see what you guys are saying. The opportunity, Dak liking a tight end. I just think we might actually see kind of a rotational tight end swap, at least for
the tight end in the second. That's the objection, right?
Well, yeah, and I
but I don't think any of us like Schoonmaker.
I don't like Schoonmaker.
No, I call him Luke Jag Faker because he is faking it out there as a total jag.
Okay, yeah. Fair point. But what I'm trying to say is, if Jake Ferguson and Schoonmaker rotate the position, and there might be an opportunity later down the line where they're moving with like an 80% snap share with Ferguson, but I don't think we see that until later in the year. And this guy is truth be told, I think this guy's going to be in waivers in most drafts. And if that happens, I pick him off waivers and I have a nice little tight end. But
to be clear, I don't think he's going to get 80% of the snaps. I think he'll get 60% of the snaps. But Schoonmaker's in there to block, and Ferguson's going to be running routes. So that's all that I think.
Targets per route run, that kind of stuff. He's going to be on the field when they're throwing the ball, and Dak loves feeding tight ends over the middle. I think Blake and we have some very conflicting takes, but for some reason we just meshed on this one. And
hey, when you're right, baby.
We left the guy on waivers. Neither of us picked him up. we neither of us picked this guy up.
True, it hurts a little bit. No, but that's
I have him
Dynasty,
in
though. I
a
don't
couple
necessarily
leagues.
want
Yeah.
him in Dynasty.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is more a redraft, year long.
1 year.
Take
This is
advantage of
1
this
year league
moment.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And for the record, you're getting him in the 17th round. Like he's my wide,
Yeah, dude,
he's my
it's a
tight end
total dart.
13.
You're picking this
Bro,
guy off waivers.
If the odds are, you would figure, in waivers for sure. So like, no risk involved at all.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Get Murray with your last pick, and then go get Ferguson and fade the
That's
tight
the
end
move.
position entirely. No, just kidding.
Yeah, don't even
wanna
draft
make-
one.
I just want to be clear. I'm totally kidding about that. Take some other.
We're trying to give
dart
sound
throw
fantasy
to-
advice, guys.
Yeah.
We're a
Yeah.
small channel here. We're not trying to
Sound
scare people off, all right? We need to give them real advice. They don't know when we're joking. But yes, Jake Ferguson is somebody you can look at in the later rounds. I mean, we're not telling you to fade the position and just put this guy on your team. So that's a joke, guys. Moving on, we got Sam Laporta at 17. We have Greg Dulcich at 18. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy's name. Chig at 19. I have Gerald Everett at 15. You have him at 20, Johnny. Blake, you have him at 24. We have him as our overall tight end 20. Why are you guys so low on him? This guy's tied to a good QB. I mean, can we? I know it's hard to predict an MVP season, but can we at least get on the same page that Justin Herbert could possibly have that type of year where he throws for 45 touchdowns? I mean, that's in the range of outcomes for him, right? And if that happens,
Yeah, but it's not going to Everett.
You do. True. Okay, but let's just say Everett gives you 8 touchdowns.
I'm a big fan of that offense and that passing volume, especially with Kellen Moore there this year. I think they're going to actually finally utilize Herbert the way that he should be. I'm a big fan of QJ. I am. I think we were all wrong about him when we drafted our rookie draft for Dynasty, and he fell into the late first round. I think he's going to eat year one, and I think that's the third wide receiver in that offense. And Gerald Everett's he's a bad player.
Fair enough.
Wait, but the thing I have there is like QJ's. It's out in the open that Josh Palmer's wide receiver 3 to start the year, which I think is also kind of funny. Like this
That's
guy
fine.
said,
they like Palmer
it came
too.
out though that Quentin Johnson said he won the wide receiver 3 role. There's like that is
that's
out
weird.
there in recording.
Yeah.
Some of it is like funky to me. And he's not Jamar Chase. People keep talking about Jamar Chase had drops in the preseason. He didn't go 5 overall, right? He was passed. He wasn't even the first wide receiver taken. So Quentin Johnson, but I don't hate him. I have him in a league. I hope it works out. But I just looked it up real quick, and Everett is sleeper rank ADP tight end 19. And
that's where we got him. So
that's where I have him at 20. I don't feel like I'm low on him. I agree with everything you said, but I also kind of agree with what Blake said. That Herbert's he likes to throw it out. He likes to sling it all over the field. I think that he'll throw it a lot to Eckler and the wide receivers.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Eckler's there, and Palmer is just another guy to take targets from Everett. So if he's the wide receiver 3, then they have 4 guys that they really like, and that's less targets even more. So for Everett.
I just had to look it up because I felt like Everett did have a pretty solid year last year, and he was the tight end 13. So like he was a good streaming option. He was like a back end, tight end 1. So I mean, it's not the worst case scenario.
That's fair.
His ADP is pretty, it's way back there. So coming off the board at he's our tight end 20. So yeah, we're not telling you to fade the position and draft Everett as your tight end 1. This is a guy that you could probably pick up at the end of the draft, kind of just like a Jake Ferguson. I think Ferguson obviously has a little more upside because it's kind of like the mystery box. You don't know really what you're going to get, but you know what you're going to get with Everett. You're going to get 80 targets, 60-something catches, and probably like something close to 800 yards. And it's not sexy, but
that seems way high. I think you think that's like a bad year, but that's like
maybe, you know what? You're right. That actually was pretty high because now I'm thinking about it. 800 yards would probably give him like tight end 6.
Yeah,
that's Gabe Davis's year, baby. That's Gabe Davis's year. That's pretty good, dude.
Hey, leave Gabe Davis out of there.
Year, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, you're right. Actually, he had 555 yards last year, so that 800 yards would be a huge step.
Okay, but okay.
But anyways, Yeah, that's it. Actually, we have kind of wrapped up our tight end rankings. I'm gonna put some links in the description of Johnny's Jonathan Taylor take and his Twitter, as well as our rankings. We're gonna put that up as well for you, our full rankings if you're interested in that. And we're gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys liked it. Again, we are a small community. We're growing every day. If you could do us like the hugest favor, drop a like on the video, comment anything you like about our rankings, and yeah, we will see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.